Just last week, I read that 80,000 Scottish employees had chosen to leave their jobs in the last 12 months rather than comply with a return to the office mandate. Yet, employers in Scotland, 10% of them, think it's a good idea and they are going to implement return to office mandates in the next 12 months. So I really don't understand that. In a time when the economy is in a very low productivity state, I don't understand why no employees would be better than having remote employees. So I'm going to take a little look at this today. My name's Lucy, and I've been working for 35 years, starting out in financial services marketing before moving into the charity sector, where I led large teams in charities across the UK and around the world. As of a few weeks ago, I'm a brand new YouTuber, so I'm making some videos about these issues, sharing my thoughts and my learnings. And as of yesterday, I am pleased to report I have got one whole subscriber, which is really exciting. So do me a favour and don't let that person be the only one. It would be great to see some more of you. So let's get back to return to the office mandates and what I think about them. Now, when I started out in work, we all used to work in the same office. And it was really normal to commute in every day. I'm talking about central London. So we'd commute into the office and we'd be there Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 as a general rule. We didn't even have laptops or personal computers back in those days. I'm talking about the early 90s. And so that was the pattern of work that I really thought was the default. And I hadn't really thought about anything different until a little while later when I worked in international teams, and I realised that I was part of a team. At one point I had colleagues in Canada, Philippines, Kenya, India, and I was based in South London. So we were talking about time zones that were all around the world and different cultures all coming together. And I realised that we were still part of a team, and yet I didn't even know what the office looked like of some of my colleagues, and yet we all worked really hard, and we were all part of the same sort of movement for what we were doing at that point. And so I really started to challenge my own assumptions about what work life could look like. And a little bit after that, I moved job and I worked for a UK charity. And in that job, I had team members in the north of Scotland, in Northern Ireland, in Wales, and in the south of Cornwall. I was based in London again, but I had my much bigger team was based in Bristol. And again, there were many different work patterns in that team, and it was a largely female workforce. So lots of people had parental responsibilities, women and men in that team. And so there were a number of different working patterns throughout the team. And what was really interesting to me was I started to learn that if you trusted people and made it clear that as long as they got their job done and you didn't mind where they were or when they were doing their work, then they would reward you with a huge amount of trust and loyalty back. And I worked out that people would usually stay longer in that job because you were giving them that trust, and they really valued the flexibility that you were giving them, and they made their lives work around it, which is what I think is so extraordinary about return to office mandates, particularly coming out of the pandemic, when so many people have been re-evaluating what work means to them and how important, the relative importance of work. Many people have decided that in fact family time, personal space is more important than work, which is why those 80,000 people, I'm sure some of them have just thought, well, work isn't so important to me that I will give up these aspects of my personal life in order to comply with what my employer's telling me. And you can see that the employer in that case is breaching that trust with their employees. They're saying, we can't trust you to do your job unless we can see you in the office. I just find that completely extraordinary. So trust for me is a key ingredient of in a sense, the unspoken contract between the employer and the employee. And if there isn't trust, then there isn't really anything. And so you're as an employer, you're showing that you don't trust your employees if you're forcing them back into the office. The other thing that was really important to make that flexible working work in that job that I had was to make sure that we were treating our staff equally. So you weren't favouring somebody that was in the office every day that you might see much more regularly over people that were based in a different part of the country. So I made it a real mission of mine to get myself out there and visit as many of my teams across the country as I could. And it was quite a mission because I had charity shops as well as office spaces. So there were shops all around to visit as well. But the staff members really valued that I'd come and visit them, and they'd, treat me really well, and I got to know them better because I could see where they were based, and often they would tell me things that were quite easily fixable, that were, things that might not be working well in their office, or something like that. So I would learn a lot about it, and it would show, I think, that me making that effort would show how much I really valued those teams. The other ingredient that was really important was making sure that when we did come together as senior managers or teams, that we made really good use of that time, and we really respected the time that we were coming together, because it was a very big investment. You not only had the investment of time, the investment of travel, it was really important to use that time wisely, because you couldn't do it very often. It was maybe at maximum 4 times a year that we would be able to come together as senior managers. And so that was really important to kind of include not only the sort of business of the meeting, the purpose of the meeting, but to sort of think really carefully about what are the things that we can do better when we're all in the same place, when all our brains are together and we're sparking off each other. What are the things that we can do better together, like strategic planning, for example, that we wouldn't do if we were apart. So rather than making the meeting about sharing information, where you could just write some bullet points in an email, like going round the table doing updates, would be a complete waste of time, because you can do an update in an email. But where's the value in bringing those people together into the same space? And the other thing I wanted to talk about was, when you do bring people into the same space together, it's really important, I think, that they have the opportunity to free themselves from whatever's in their head that they're coming into the meeting with. So all of us will have things going on in our home lives, or things going on in work that are really distracting us. So if we can find a way to sort of park those for a bit, so that we can free ourselves to be fully present in that strategic planning discussion or what have you, then that's really valuable. And I learned some exercises. In fact, during the pandemic, I learned exercises that really effectively sort of bridged that movement from people being in their home, literally physically in their home, and then being in a Zoom together. And how do you move sort of metaphorically speaking, move the person's mind from whatever's going on around them at home, kids, pets, more difficult things, and then move them so that they're fully focused on that planning, or that team discussion. And those sort of check-in moments at the beginnings of meetings, I think, was something that we learned in the pandemic that I think are very, very, very valuable to keep going. In fact, I was facilitating an away day for a board of trustees just a few weeks ago, and I used that same technique, even though we were all in the same room and everybody apart from me knew each other. I thought it was really important just to spend a moment sort of reflecting on what's going on for you, what are you coming into the room with, and people were able to share they didn't have to share, but they did. Some of them shared some quite difficult things that they were grappling with, and then able to sort of park those for a little while we were together in that meeting. So those are some of the techniques, I think, that are quite important to make remote and flexible working work, And I think if employers do introduce that flexibility and that trust, then why would they need to lose staff? Why would they need to force people back into the office? It feels to me like an ideological move on their part, like they haven't, like I did. I moved from realising, or rather believing, that everybody had to be in a rigid pattern of work. I moved my thinking and I realised that things can be different. And I honestly think we can reimagine the world of work and make it better for all of us. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Please do give it a like, and who's going to be my second subscriber? Go on, I dare you. So thank you for watching, and see you next week.